In this video, we are going to cover the syntax of CSS. CSS has a simple syntax breakdown. It is selectors, then open parenthesis, then a property, then the value of that property, a semicolon, and then a closed parenthesis. Within the parentheses, you can define multiple properties to be applied to the set of selectors that you have, which is commonly laid out in this pattern. We will be covering those properties in later videos. There are many selectors in CSS. The three core ones are the element, the class selector, and the ID selector. The element selector will select all HTML elements of the same name. So we could select the body element or all the div elements or all the link elements. The class element will select all elements with that class name. For an element to have a class, the class simply needs to be defined in the class attribute of the HTML tag. So as an example, this div has a class listing, this div has a class list head. The ID works similar to the class, where it is an HTML property, but it is simply the ID tag. It differs in the way that you can only ever have one valid ID in an HTML page. Here you can see an example of multiple class listings, but you can only ever have a single content ID for it to be valid. You can mix, match, and stack selectors so you're selecting only the HTML tags that you want the CSS property to apply to. Say we want to select this span here and apply some CSS properties to it. Rather than selecting all spans where we have other spans in our document, or selecting all spans that are inside div tags, we can specifically select the title span. But say there's a title somewhere else on the page we want to use, a class title somewhere else on the page we want to use. We can be specific about saying it's in the content, it's in a listing, it's in the list head, and then select the title. So to start, we want to define the outmost item first. So in this case, we will start at the listing class. We will then define a span element, and inside the span element, we only want the title classes of that span element. We can then apply a set of selected CSS rules to that selector set that we have defined, and they will apply to the listing class with a span element that has the class title. So only this text or this HTML element will be affected by these CSS rules. So one of the ways you can think of the space character here is as an and. So the listing class and span tag and ID class, if all those are true, then these elements will be applied. There is also a or capability, so we can define two sets, have them apply to both. In this case, we can select the H1 tags as or H2 tags and set them to a special color. Here, rather than a space character separating them, we have a comma, so it's H1 or H2 tag that will apply these rules to it. We can do this in tandem with multiple selectors, so say we want only the H1s that are underneath the header or the H2s that are in the content. There is another set of selectors, which are attribute selectors. There are other selectors in CSS, such as the attribute selector, where we check an attribute in the HTML, and we can either define if it has the type, if the type equals something, and there's an entire set of logic around those. We also have special selectors such as the A and hover, or active, or visited, that have special action properties. There are many more, and a full definition of all the selectors can be found in the selector reference on the W3 Schools website. This is the end of the syntax video. In the next video, we are going to cover specificity.